If you want your calculator to find the root of some polynomial like this, then what you can do is enter that polynomial into your equation editor. It's in Y2 for me. And then when you graph it, you can ask your polynomial to find where that graph crosses the x-axis. Now, just kind of a quick word here. I'm asking you to find the root. There's two other names that I use that are equivalent to root. Does anyone know what those are? What's another way to ask you to find the root of this polynomial? X-intercept. Good. And one more. Starts with a Z. Zeros. Does that have an E in there? I don't know. Zeros. All right. So let's find the zeros. And in particular, I want to find this one to the left of negative 0.4. So hit the second key and then the calc key. Antonio?
Which one would it be? Would it be the zeros that you click on?
Yeah, so when you hit the second key and then the trace key, taking you to the calculate menu, then yeah, you want to find the zeros. So click the number 2. What your calculator is going to ask you is, well, where do you want me to look for a place where the graph crosses the x-axis? So you have to take and use your left arrow key and move someplace to the left of where the graph crosses the x-axis. So for me, this is good enough here. You don't have to have the same place as I do. When you get to some place that you think is good, you press the enter key, and it says, okay, that's the left bound of where I'm going to look. I'm going to look to the right of this. Now take your cursor and go a little bit to the right of where that root will be. So I don't have to go quite that far. I can go a little closer. It doesn't matter. Press enter again. Now it says, okay, I'm going to look for where the graph crosses the x-axis in this region. To get it to actually find that value, you're going to press enter one more time, and bam, you should get negative 0.42857, etc. So, okay, looks good. Now, let's look back at our handout. Negative 4.28 something doesn't exactly look familiar, but if you played with a few decimal values, you might see that that looks pretty close to, I don't know, this value here. Let me see if there's a way I can help you find that. Let me clear this out. That value that we just came up with is stored in X. And if you press the math key, this might work. I don't know. There's no guarantees. There you go. Ooh, gives it to you. It's negative 3/7. So that's one of our roots. Let's see if we can't find the other two. We'll practice this one more time with our graph. So go to the graph and let's see. I want to find this root right here. So, okay. Second calc. Again, I want to find a 0. This time I got to move over a little bit. I'm above the x-axis here. I can tell that because my y-coordinate is positive. So I'll press enter. Move a little bit to the right. Now my y-coordinate is negative, so I crossed over the x-axis. It's going to look for a root in here. What are you getting for that root? Anyone figure out what that fraction represents? Robert? 1/3. 1/3.
Negative 1/3.
Yeah, negative 1/3 to be very precise. Well done. So negative 1/3. Nice. So we've got 2 roots down. We're going to need to figure out a third one. Let's keep a little running tab like this. So our root, x equals negative 3/7, and x equals negative 1/3. We need to come up with one more here. And eventually I want to try and come up with a binomial. But let's figure out what that last root is. Now I'm going to do it by looking at this handout and also looking at the graph. Antonio made a nice suggestion here. He suggested we put tick marks every 0.2 units. Where does it look like this is crossing the x-axis? Yeah, 0.4, right? So, is 0.4 a root? Here's a clever way to find out if 0.4 is a root. So what you can do is hit the trace key. If you know an actual value that you're thinking, hey, this is going to work, just type it in. So once you start typing numbers, it's going to open up a little window at the bottom of your calculator to show you where you're typing in. So 0.4. So just type that in, 0.4, and when you press the enter key, it'll put a point on that graph. How do I know that 0.4 is actually a root of this polynomial? Ah, well done. Y is 0. Yeah, you can see the y coordinate right here is y is 0. So, cool. Very cool. Are you okay with our tech here? Ellie?
Like, what if y was like 0 point, I don't know, 0.0012, whatever?
Well, sometimes you'll get, and that's a good question, sometimes you'll get, a really, really small decimal value. And at that point, you got to decide, well, is it just the calculator making a rounding error, or is this actually just not a root? It could be either one. So for instance, if I hit the trace key and I type in 0.40001, you're getting something which is really, really close to 0. That's just times 10 to the negative 6, which means if you wrote it as a decimal, you'd have 5 leading zeros and then the 6. So it means you're very close to a root, but you're not exactly there. So maybe you try 0.4 and that works. So great question. Let's put that last one down. One more common observation here. If you're looking at 0.4 and you want to turn that into a fraction, you can hit the math key and press enter twice. So that gives us our fraction of 2/5. Let's put that one down here. X equal 2/5. And I'm going to put miscellaneous because there's a little miscellaneous work we're going to do here. We're going to figure out, well, what's the actual factorization of this polynomial? The most important part, though, is that are you okay with how we actually found these values, our roots? Can you get that from your calculator? Gavin, is that a yes? Just say yes. Good answer. Good answer. Thank you, Gavin. All right, so let's multiply both sides here by 7. I want to clear out that fraction. So if I multiply both sides by 7, I get 7x equals negative 3. And then I want to move this term to the left-hand side. So if I do that, I'll end up with 7x plus 3 equals 0. I'm just going to leave off the equals 0 because I don't have room for it. What would that look like if I did that down here? This middle line, this middle step would be 3x equals negative 1. And then move that over 3x plus 1. All right. Really, it's equals 0, equals 0. I don't have room for that equals 0, sorry. And then finally, 5x equals 2. What's the binomial that I get from that? 5x minus 2. And technically, those are all equal 0. But these are the factors that correspond to these roots. So my polynomial up here, y, can be rewritten as y equals 7x plus 3 times 3x plus 1 times 5x minus 2. Yeah. There you go. Beautiful. So you got it completely factored now, which is nice. Are you comfortable with some of the graphing calculator tricks that we did here? Those are really handy, and I want and expect you to be able to use them. So if you're not able to do that, come get some help. Check out my YouTube channel. Make sure that you can do those things. All right, any other comments or questions on that one? Okay.